Warning: some stories may be disturbing for some audiences. Viewer discretion advised. Welcome. Thank you for coming. Subscribe and like for more stories. What's the most legendary thing that happened in your school? A student accidentally butt-dialed his mother while the class was watching Platoon. The SWAT team showed up. Two teachers having sex in an empty class. They thought they had locked the door. A student caught them. They were both fired. A student locked his teacher and classmates in a room after setting it on fire. It wasn't a very good school. We have a school news channel that sometimes did live segments about new stuff going on. This was every morning in homeroom. One morning they are doing a walkthrough of the new part of the school just built. They walk into a staircase, and some girl is sitting on some kid's face on the floor. This is at 8 a.m. and the entire school saw it. Jeff jumped off the roof of the chapel into a dumpster filled with empty cardboard boxes. 50-foot drop, 8x8 dumpster. Edit: we are gathered here today to mourn the inbox of AskReddit. Edit 2. Some background. Twice a week at our school, the junior and senior guys were on garbage/recycling duty after lunch. We'd gather all the garbage bags and recycling from the classrooms and offices. The building was a school attached to a church with offices and a sort of community center. It wasn't a huge building, but it was pretty big. We'd take all the garbage and trash out to the dumpster, which was set next to some sheds behind the building. That's how it all started. Jeff jumping off a 10 to 12-foot shed into a dumpster full of cardboard boxes. We'd laugh, roll the dumpster out to where the garbage guy could get to it. Someone else rolled it back when garbage was collected. One day Jeff climbed the backstop of the baseball field right near the dumpsters. That was a 25 to 30-foot drop, I think. He made that one look easy. Then he dropped in from out of a tree that was probably about 40 feet. Finally, about a month from our graduation, he told us his plan. He had to break into the crawl space above the chapel, accessible by a padlock trapdoor on the third floor of classrooms, then climb up through the attic space of the chapel and onto the roof. The chapel parking lot sloped sharply by about 7 to 8 feet, which is where the 50-foot drop comes in. We saved boxes for weeks, set them up in the dumpster, put it in the parking lot about 15 feet from the chapel wall, and watched him jump. At the school where I used to teach, the students told me that years ago, someone swapped the science teacher's Bill Nye video with a hardcore porn tape. According to legend, the teacher didn't notice for quite a while, and the students watched several minutes of smut that day. I told my class that it was a stupid rumor, and I'm sure that never happened. When class was over, one of my students walked up and said, "Mr. Hi-Fi Low Class, it's true. My brother was the one who switched the tape." There was a huge sexting scandal where a handful of girls' images were being sent around. Well, when the school caught wind of it, they did the only thing a school could do. They held an assembly, girls in the auditorium, and boys in the gym. After an hour or so of "you shouldn't do that," they had the district attorney come in to talk about the legality of underage sexting. One of the seniors stood up and asked him if it was legal if they were over 18. He said yes, and the entire place went nuts. Everyone was cheering, clapping, and laughing. The principal walked over to the mic and said, "Who asked that?" The guy stood up again and triumphantly said, "Zen Master Steve." The audience once again erupted into cheers as he got called into the principal's office. When I was in grade 9, I was sitting in the computer lab working, and during the communications class, all of a sudden, we hear this loud revving getting louder and louder, something passing by very quickly then fading away. Our teacher ran out of the room after it, and crike, I had no idea the man could move that quickly. I was in crutches due to a sports injury, so I had to hobble out behind the rest of the class as we tried to find out what was going on. Apparently, one of the seniors brought an ATV to school and drove through the halls. What was legendary was that he somehow was never caught. Edit: I love the internet. Half the replies are about my 6 a.m. sleepy mistype. All of the sudden. I mean, it's technically not wrong. Edit: more detail. This was in Canada, in the early 2000s. There was a video floating somewhere on FB, which means it's probably lost forever. Pretty crappy, since it was literally one of the early digital cameras taped onto the guy's helmet. If I remember correctly, they let him in through an unused auto classroom side door, and he rode out the back. The area was very rural, so he probably drove it instead of in the back of a pickup. Most likely rode it straight home too, so yeah, no proof at the end of it. Rumor says 2 junior kids had sex in the gym changing room. It's nothing that special, but in the story, the girl was on period, but they did it anyway. How did they know the girl was on period? Because a teacher heard it and told them to come out immediately. The boy came out with blood on his face like a coyote eating a corpse. Apparently someone liked going downtown speeding through red lights. My middle school was on a hill, and the tallest building in the area. During Fleet Week, the Blue Angels flew, what must have been, 100 to 200 feet above it, shattered like 30 windows on the top floor of the school. My first day of high school, I was starting at a whole new neighborhood from moving, and knew no one, so I kept to myself. I didn't handle crowds all too well, but I mustered the courage to get out of bed and get ready for school. I ran downstairs and talked to my dad about what I expected to get out of the day, and ate breakfast. I walked out to the corner to catch the school bus, and that was awful. Nowhere to sit as everyone felt they each had their own damn seat. Story short, I made it to school. As soon as we made it to the school, I started walking to my locker. There were so many people I was about to lose my mind, and I asked myself if it could get any worse. It did. A girl bumped me from behind to get ahead to catch up with someone. In one swift action, she ripped off her backpack and unzipped it to pull out a kitchen knife to stab the girl directly in front of me right in the back. I froze. I couldn't breathe. I felt dizzy. I turned around and walked straight home. I lived about 10 miles away. I just kept walking. I never looked back. I just wanted to make it home, crawl upstairs, and sleep in. I took an A+ course in high school. We had an alright size lab room for stripping computers, and another room full of computers for other work or lessons. There were a few stuffed animals in the lesson room as a half-assed attempt by my teacher to decorate. Those come into play later. My teacher kept finding porn history on one of the computers. It was always horribly spelled or incoherent searches, and she assumed it was a freshman being a smartass to impress his friends during a different class. One day she gets fed up with it, and makes a special project for us nerds in her A+ course. She gave us one of the lab computers, and the smallest cam she could find, and asked us to make a hidden camera. We complied, and made a decent one, and brought it into the other room, set it to record with more than enough hard drive space, and aimed it at the perp's computer. The next day we fire up the vid, and see one of the seniors coming in before school starts, googling some porn, and giving himself the old wax job. He cleaned up with one of the stuffed animals, and went about his business. She threw out the stuffed animals, and the cops got involved. Kid got into trouble, but went into the army after high school, so maybe it all worked out in the end. Seems like every couple months you practice fire drills, and one day the alarm goes off. We start making our way down the stairwell, and there is smoke. I get outside, and say to somebody, "Wow, they make these fire drills so realistic, smoke, and everything." The reply I got back was, "The school really is on fire." So yeah, my school caught on fire. That was legendary. I'm not the brightest tool in the shed. Someone, not me, was tired of drug dogs going through the halls. So someone sprayed bong water all over the principal's car. Dogs didn't come back. A guy from my high school thought it would be a great idea to streak through the halls on the last day of school. After running around buck-ass naked, people who witnessed it began whispering about some guy streaking. Pretty soon the entire school was talking about this unknown mystery guy who ran around with his dick out. Biology teacher witnessed it, and said maybe it's just chilly today, but he isn't very well endowed. Soon after, he went to the front office, and turned himself in. He apparently walked into a room full of administrators, all women, and just said it was me. They all busted out laughing, and said just don't do it again. Edit, typo frown. Some dude in English class sat next to the electrical outlet, so he decided to grab the kid next to him, and stick a piece of metal into the outlet. Shocked the hell out of both of them. They were both fairly okay, but almost scared the teacher to death. Also, there was the time a girl had sex with two dudes in the auditorium during a basketball game, and it was caught on the school camera. Her family ended up sending her somewhere else after that. I attended a high school called Rampart that, despite being a blue ribbon school, had serious budget issues. The budget problems got so bad that the principal started renting out the school gym to anyone willing to pay up to use it. Some guy rented the gym out for a Saturday night, saying he was going to hold a church dance. Instead, he held a rave that got so out of hand it destroyed the gym. The incident quickly grew into legend amongst the students. Many claimed to have been there or to have known the guy who threw the rave. We weren't able to use the gym for the rest of the year. They kept the doors locked, but there were constant attempts to force them open so we could see the damage. It didn't take long for the students to start referring to the school as Ravpart, and whenever we had to sing the national anthem would finish it, and the home of the rave. The next year we had a new principal too, but we never knew if the old principal was fired because of the rave incident. Not too long after Columbine, two kids ran into the commons at my high school. and started throwing firecrackers everywhere. Most students thought it was a shooting, and ran away, terrified. Someone called in a bomb threat right after. If I recall correctly, they only caught one person involved. Edit, a comma. Kid gets yelled at, runs out of school into the woods. Helicopters come, and search for hours for the kid. School goes on lockdown. SWAT team finds him a mile away eating Snickers in the woods. Comes back next week like nothing happened. I saw the whole thing out the window, very crazy. Happened last month. Edit, whoa, first comment for me to blow up, thanks guys. My high school was a bit on the sketchy side. 1. During my sophomore year there was a fire, and despite all the fire drills we'd been doing since kindergarten, no one really knew what to do. Some students made their way 10 blocks away to a Wendy's, and a Waldbaum's, where they proceeded to rob both. 2. At the end of my junior year, this sophomore threw his freshman girlfriend through a display case. She ended up with 13 stitches, and he got a lovely pair of handcuffs. 3. In my senior year, we got a new principal because the old one quit at the end of the year prior. Anyway, this was the year the 5th Harry Potter book came out, and even before the school year started people were calling her Umbridge because of her reputation at her last school. Most of us thought she couldn't be that bad. Then we met her. She really was awful. To make matters worse, she was racist to boot. One of the black teachers didn't agree with her teaching style, so she fired his lazy, nigger ass. In her words, within a week, the NAACP was at the school. Before she finally resigned, there was a student walkout, and people started throwing cafeteria fruit at her whenever they saw her. We were all glad to be rid of her. My junior year, the seniors put hay everywhere inside the effing English building, where it basically looked like a farm. One of the admins wasn't even letting people look at the mess inside. Also, when I was in 2nd grade, my school was supposed to have a fire drill, so for some reason the alarm wasn't going off. The lunch ladies decided it would be a good idea to set something in the kitchen on fire to make the alarm go off. They burned a good majority of the lunch that was supposed to be served that day. One hot day in June when I was in 6th, 7th grade, there was basically a riot at our school. Pretty much every kid in the school at lunch recess gathered at the office entrance to the school, and started chanting, "It's too hot, we want to go home." It was pretty incredible. A teacher at one point came out, and said, "We're calling the police." To no avail. Finally the bell rang, and everyone cheered, and went inside. No one I've talked to remembers this event. This happened at my school in the UK around 2002. We had an indoor swimming pool at my school that was always really cold, and one particularly freezing December day, a bunch of us decided that we really didn't fancy having to do swimming for pee. So we dared this kid called Todd, who was pretty crazy, to crap in the pool. He said he would do it for £10. We had a quick whip round, and managed to get the money pretty quick between us. To avoid getting caught, he decided to crap into the pool from the roof, through a skylight. A lot of the buildings in our school had staircases on the outside, so it didn't take much effort for a couple of us to give him a leg up onto the roof. Once he was up there, we ran back down to the pool, and looked through the windows. Sure enough, after a couple of minutes, we saw 2 or 3 of Todd's ass apples drop into the perfectly still pool, causing a gentle, disgusting, but oddly beautiful ripple. There was no pee for us that day. There is a tradition here in Australia that the Year 12s, final year of high school, usually have a day called muck-up day where they play pranks or whatever in the school. Well, one year, the Year 12s decided to F with the whole school, and placed roadwork signs and cones on one of the main roads next to the school. They diverted all that traffic through the school, essentially effing up a lot of people's day. It's the best thing anyone has done on muck-up day at our school. Our school has a huge statue of a Mustang at the front because our mascot is a Mustang. It's about 40 feet up above the entryway so everyone sees it when they come in. One morning there was a bright pink dildo on it because Mustangs are male, and our huge statue was neutered. It took them a while to get it off of there because they didn't want to ruin the statue or leave any piece of the evidence behind, and it was too heavy to remove from its place. So there it stayed with a banner hung across the entryway blocking the statue. Nobody knows who did it except for the masterminds of the crime. Edit. The school was in Southwest Pennsylvania. Subscribe and turn on the notification bell for more stories delivered to you. Thanks for listening. See you later.